apologizing? How many women have apologized to me for scars, for saying, I missed my mammogram because I took my kid to the dentist? And really trying to unpack not just the biology of how much we miss in women's health, which we've heard from these amazing scientists and doctors today, but how we devalue women's bodies. Because a lot of times, I'll go on air and people say, what are the 10 steps to our wellness? I can tell you when you need to get your mammogram. I can tell you when you need to get your colonoscopy. But if you don't value your own health, if society doesn't value women's health care, then we've gone nowhere. And so I'm really just feel so privileged to be part of everybody's why today and our collective power that we have in this room to move the needle towards more equitable care.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Linda Goler-Blount of the Black Women's Health Imperative, will you share your why with us?
Yeah, and I just want to add my thanks. This is an amazing event. Thank you for hosting this. My why, we all have a personal story, but I'm also an epidemiologist, so I tend to bring data to my why. We've talked about the value of women's health, and we talk about it at the really big level, trillions of dollars. But if women had optimal health, it would actually increase corporate earnings by 15 to 20%. Now, I run a nonprofit. My job is not to make money for corporate America at all. But income and poverty are very closely associated with health, as we know. And Black women, despite being overrepresented in the workforce, tend to have lower pay and have higher rates of poverty. So what we see is they tend not to get the standard of care, and they tend not to have the kind of access, and they're certainly not represented in research, and we'll talk about that. But my why also comes from looking at the women that we serve every day, my own family. So my daughter, highly educated, high resource, preterm birth is the thing we read about all the time. And she had access to every kind of care, and yet this happened. So if a woman with 3 degrees and a high income can't count on getting the standard of care, might get her breast cancer missed or misdiagnosed, might be ignored when she's complaining about not feeling well after having a baby. If it happens to her, then it can happen to anyone. So my why is to make sure that doesn't happen. We can do better, we know better, and it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we all prevent that and that we all get the standard of care that we deserve.
Thank you. Thank you. And now, Robin Arzon of Peloton.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Arzon. I am Vice President of Fitness Programming at Peloton. I sincerely hoped we have moved together in some way, shape, or form. That is my life's mission, is to get people moving. I was not always an athlete. We talked a little bit today about storytelling. I believe Jessica mentioned, stories being so pivotal to this work. We can see trends, we can read research, but it is my singular mission that women feel at home and empowered in their bodies. Movement is medicine, and sure, I love seeing biomarkers, change, but I more so like to see the spark turn on. I see can't turn to can millions of times a day. A lot of those interactions are virtual, so I consider myself a digital creator, a digital storyteller. My Peloton classes mostly are virtual, and anecdotally, I'm a nicer person after I've moved my body. I'm a better mother, a better partner, but I'm also a braver one. And I think rooted in movement, rooted in strength training specifically, I'm glad that is starting to trend, especially for women. That lights a spark. And it's the millions of inflection points that we're all, at various points of view, kind of intersecting on, whether it's the doctor's office, the boardroom, the kitchen table. It's a willingness to use your voice even when it shakes. So my why is getting women to feel at home in their bodies and turn whispers into roars.
Amazing. Whew. Robin knows this, but I definitely relate that movement really matters. And we'll finish up on this why question with you, Nancy Brown of the American Heart Association.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for this amazing gathering. I love the roar part of it. You know, at the American Heart Association, and for me personally, my why is that heart disease is the leading cause of death in women, more than the next 5 causes of death combined. Yet, women and women's health and women's cardiovascular health is underfunded, misdiagnosed, and women are often sent away when they have symptoms of cardiovascular disease. 45% of women over the age of 20, just get your head around that, 45% over the age of 20 have some form of cardiovascular disease, and half of women in this country, because of their cardiovascular health, are ill prepared for pregnancy. So we have a big job to do to raise awareness and to help change the system so that women get ideal cardiovascular care through their life course. For me, my why personally, I always think of my sister, 56 years old, had 2 strokes from undiagnosed atrial fibrillation. That did not have to happen to her. Thank goodness. And I see my dear friend here from our American Stroke Association. She was transported to an American Heart Association designated comprehensive stroke center where she had TPA administered, and she was able to resume her life normally. But her AFib was not diagnosed by world-class doctors until she had her strokes. And this should not happen to women in this country. Women should not be sent away from emergency rooms. Women should not be told that their cardiovascular symptoms are stress and anxiety and that they should go home and get some rest. This still happens to women today, and that is my why.
Thank you, Nancy. All righty, we're going to roll up our sleeves and dig in just a little bit. Robin, I'm going to come back to you. I loved what you said about storytelling, and I'm sure everybody here already follows Robin, but if you don't, you need to. Health influencing across social media platforms is most definitely on the rise. I have feelings, but let's focus on the positive. It builds awareness, education. In many cases, it builds community. And as we've heard earlier today, there are a lot of topics that are becoming more mainstream, like millennial pause and others. So I think that's a real benefit to all of us. But I want to talk about you specifically, because you share your story across your platforms. So what do you think about when you're sharing, and how do you think the rest of us can use some of those platforms to help close these gaps that we've identified today in research?
I mean, I think that there's, when you share a story on social media or in community, right? This is a new way that we are gathered around campfires, right? And this, it feels like you are alone, but really you have the potential to create a cascade, to make a wave. And I think that is what I've seen time and time again on these digital platforms is, it's like, oh, I thought this was just me. And then we realize, oh, not only is it not just me, it's half of the human population probably going to know someone or experience something like this themselves. So the consciousness raising that I've seen in the community building around it is significant, but it's also the willingness to share when you see someone else being vulnerable. I mean, for myself, I was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic as an adult. It was actually on the eve of me joining Peloton. And I was in many doctors' rooms that were in disbelief that I was still going to be running ultramarathons. My mother, a practicing physician, over 40 years with access, education, had a terrible meandering diagnosis of her MS diagnosis. And it's the shock, it's the disbelief, you're not presenting as a typical patient. And listen, I am one of one limited edition, honey, so you're just gonna have to hear my story. And that is what I want folks to feel empowered to do, right? And we're seeing those connection points, and I find it really exciting that we're able to meet folks where they are, and for young folks. Like I'm really filled with hope and promise that my daughter will have greater education, greater access, and be believed about what she's feeling in her body and in between her ears. And the last thing I'll share, as a pregnant person, I have 2 young children. Being an athlete and being a pregnant athlete and receiving care based on the limited data around pregnant athletes was shocking. So I just kind of did my own thing. And I created the first pre- and postnatal program at Peloton. I created programming specifically for pregnant athletes. And I was lifting a barbell. I deadlifted a barbell literally the day that my son was born. So it's possible that we can continue to explore the edges of what was previously told we could or couldn't do.
Awesome. That does not surprise me at all that you were pumping iron the day he came into the world. Linda, I'm going to jump over to you. Autoimmune conditions affect many women, but they impact women of color in disparate and distinctively distressing ways. It's not just that condition. We could say any condition, Alzheimer's, menopause, the list goes on, because data shows that women of color are frequently forced to navigate unique healthcare challenges across every condition, including rare diseases. And it's often because there isn't enough research that specifically includes women of color. Tell us about what you think we can do to close that gap, and what makes you excited about being in this line of work and the future of this work.
I love optimism. I am the eternal optimist. I have to be. So you're right. I mean, to look at the data, there's gross disparities. We see it in autoimmune diseases. Women overrepresent. I mean, they have 7 times the rates of lupus, for example. Black women have 3 times the rates of lupus as compared to white women. But we see this in breast cancer. 3x maternal rates, obviously maternal health. I mean, it's sort of across the board. And, part of this is, just our lived experiences, our circumstances. But the thing that we do know is there's no biologic or genetic explanation for this. Race is not biology or genetics. There is a lack of research. We simply don't understand. And for rare diseases, as you mentioned, a black family with a child who's got inexplicable symptoms will wait on average 7 to 9 years longer for a diagnosis as compared to a white family, just to find out what it is. We have someone in our group who was 52 when his cystic fibrosis diagnosis came in. I mean, that's almost unheard of. But when you show up at a physician, there's just not enough data. We talk about getting the standard of care, but if there's no research, your physician, your provider doesn't know what to do. There's no literature for her to refer to for your care. And if you look at research, we've talked about the dearth of research for women's health, but for black women's health, at the highest level, you're talking less than 2% of all funding goes to explore anything with black women or women of color. The percentage of researchers at the highest level that NIH funds hasn't changed in 40 years. It's still under 2%. So we've got a long way to go. So at the Black Women's Health Imperative, we're very much focused on, yes, sort of explaining and helping women understand, but solving the problem. So we formed a Rare Disease Diversity Coalition, which is a $20 million, 60-plus member coalition to examine what actually happens. Why can't people get a rare disease diagnosis? Why does it take so long? What are the research gaps? So next year, we'll produce the very first paper that actually looks at clinical trials participation among rare disease patients to see who's actually in the trials. There's a saying, we talk about evidence-based medicine all the time. What becomes evidence depends on who's asking the questions and who they're asking. Some might say who's funding it. But until we change that, then we continue not to have the kinds of answers we need. And the other thing that I'm really excited about and optimistic about is we've launched a breast and cervical cancer research project. So, we've talked about screening of breast cancer, and the difference that black women experience. Again, not biology. This research project will finally answer the question as to when Black women should start screening and how often they should start screening and what the issues are with their treatment and their health outcomes. I'm really excited about finally being able to say to physicians, this is what we know, this is what you ought to do, and then giving women the tools. So until we have the kind of research that we need, we encourage women to ask questions when they go to the doctor. Because it's not that doctors are not trying to provide good care. Some things just don't occur to them. So by prompting them, do I have colon cancer? Do I have breast cancer? Should I do this? It'll at least get a doctor thinking, oh, yeah, I should probably order this test or this screening, or maybe I should refer you to this provider, so that women have the best chance of getting the standard of care while we wait for the research and the data to finally answer the questions that we frankly should have answered a long time ago.
Oof, yes. Thank you so much. Those are staggering statistics. You really put it in great context, and also I so appreciate some tactical, real-world advice that I think we can all take into our communities. Elizabeth, I'm going to move over to you. You shared a heartbreaking and emotional story just a second ago about your patient on her deathbed, and you've also said before in your writing, we need to stop apologizing for our medical needs and start asking questions that will lead to better knowledge and better health. I feel a lot of momentum here today on this stage and amongst all of you. What can we do to keep this going?
We will keep it going. I have complete and entire faith that we will, and I just want to dovetail on what you said. I think in order to keep this going, we have to think about all the spaces that we experience medicine and scientific discovery. I mean, we're in the White House after all. I don't need to tell this group that it's inextricably linked to political landscapes as well. But we have the power to change who has a seat at the table and who we're listening to, because you couldn't be more right that unless we are listening and having an open mind to what are the issues that women are actually facing, what can we invest in? And we've got Lucy Perez here from McKinsey and Wham, Carolee Lee, who talk so much about the importance of investing in women's health, but also understanding what women actually experience in order to drive the research forward, from the preclinical models to the exam room to what women feel when they go home. I'll share with you one quick story. I was doing a study for many years trying to develop a blood test that would pair with mammograms, and it's still ongoing to see when a woman goes for a mammogram and may need a call back, does she actually need the biopsy? Can we defer the biopsy? And I was working with this genius guy in the lab, and I was the one that was consenting women after their abnormal mammograms to get a blood test. Now you can imagine you have an abnormal mammogram, you don't know what the next steps are. It's very hard to then say, oh, before you go home, come, I'm gonna do a blood test on you. And the guy in the lab, this genius, was so frustrated. He goes, what's the big deal? It's like an x-ray, right? And I kept trying to explain to him, this is a really scary experience. Yes, you're a genius, but you need to understand the framework and context within women are experiencing this. And it wasn't until years later that his wife went for a mammogram that he said, my God, I really had no idea. So we need to change who is doing the research and have a diversity of spirits and expertise and backgrounds so that we are as inclusive as we should be. And I just want to give a shout out to Robin in straightening her crown for all of us and empowering all of us in all sorts of spaces to find power and strength in movement and our bodies. You've changed my life, Elizabeth. And I probably would not be here and I would not have written my book had you not told me to straighten my own crown. So thank you.
Amazing. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Joanna, I'm going to pop over to you now. MIDI Health, I am a huge fan. You really stepped up at a time before the world had finally woken up, which I believe they have today. At this point, the world realizes that 100% of 50% of the population
really?
goes through menopause. I know.
Can you believe it's not a niche market?
I know. And it sounds almost, silly at this point because that conversation is so out there. But I can only imagine that when you were pounding the pavement and when you were raising money and talking to VC firms, that the reception maybe is not what we would hope and expect it would be today. So I want to talk to you about how investors do play a role in advancing women's health research and female-founded companies and female health companies. Where are the gaps? How can we close them? And are there any opportunities you want to mention?
So, you say invest in women, and that is that is a mantra, right? Women start great companies. We have to get investment in women so they can build those huge companies, because once more people see large companies built by women, they will then fund more companies like that. It is definitely it's a virtuous cycle, and I think we all have to understand that. And we have to get women funded at all parts of the cycle. We have to get the angel funds thinking about women. We have to get the A and the B and the public markets all thinking about the fact that women outperform, and women are great entrepreneurs and great CEOs and can build enormous companies. And just like when we're talking about Maven, we need a lot of great women's health companies that are funded, because then there will be more of them. There's no way around it. We all pattern match, right? And so it is true. And a few years ago when we started talking to investors about menopause, they just looked at us like we were crazy. Like, why would this matter? And it took a lot of convincing that it would matter. And I am eternally grateful to those initial investors who were willing to bet on us. Now it's a lot easier. Now we have hundreds of thousands of people. Insurance companies are paying for us. They can see we're making significant revenue. Much easier to invest. So I think that we have to all rally around building big women's health companies, because it is going to then build more of them. There's no way around it. Like, once you see a few, you start getting confidence that there's going to be more. And so, take those initial bets, bet on a lot of early stages. Some of them are, what early money is like yeast, right? We all know about that saying. It is so true in women's health as well. And so we all have to be funding them early and then funding them often, so that we can create a lot of great companies. I'm just so confident they will exist. I have an incredible amount of confidence that whether it's this room, just the research alone in this room could create multi-billion-dollar companies. So we just need to take the research and channel it and execute.
Amazing. Thank you, Joanna. Okay, we are down to the last few seconds. But Nancy, I want to give you a quick opportunity to speak about your perspective at the AHA. Anything you want to respond to or close us out with?
Well, I think these amazing women, just go to show the power of women working together can make anything happen. And that's certainly what we believe at the AHA, whether it's through our targeted research funding, our new Go Red for Women venture fund that we've just launched to close the gap in investment in women's cardiovascular health. And I would like to say our Research Goes Red registry, where instead of asking women to participate in something that a researcher cares about, we are focused on what is it that the women want to have studied. And so that's an important angle as well, because they care a lot about every single thing that we've talked about today.
Thank you. That is very exciting. I want to thank each of you for sharing your personal connection to women's health and for being such amazing luminaries and advocates in this space. I know that I learned a lot today. I feel very inspired by each of you. I'm certain this audience does. And I also know that you will continue to inspire the rest of the world. So thank you very much.
Distinguished guests, please remain in your seats as we transition for our closing remarks. Thank you. Distinguished guests, the President of the United States and Dr. Biden.
You're so quiet. It's like a classroom. So in the intermission, were you all like dancing and everything? Get a little movement. You've been sitting for a while, so thank you for standing. But I'm glad you get a little, like you said, Robin, a little movement, right? That's what it's all about. So, please sit down, please. If you feel all stretched out by now. So before I begin, I just want to say I'm so glad that you got to come here today, because the White House is decorated. And the theme this year is peace and light. So I hope that you all feel that sense of, peace and light, and that just for a moment when you leave here today that you feel, a sense of joy. Because I think we all need we all need to feel joy now during this time of the season, during this time. So anyway, okay, now I'll start. You're all reading into that. Anyway, for decades, for centuries even, at dinner tables and in waiting rooms, in whispered conversations, when we meet our friends for coffee, women have been talking to each other about our health. Isn't that true? Yes. So today we brought that conversation to the White House. Today we are saying to women everywhere, we hear you and we will get you the answers you need. So thank you for joining us for the White House Conference on Women's Health Research. The United States has the best health research in the world. Yet women's health is understudied and research is underfunded, and so many of you have said this. And the United States economy loses $1.8 billion in working time every year to menopause symptoms that upend women's lives. And that's what Maria Shriver and I talked about on that Saturday afternoon in April last year. So Maria keeps this quote next to her phone. You have a stationary phone? In her office, and it says, why go to the moon? And your uncle, President Kennedy, asked, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, because they are hard. So, Maria, thank you for carrying on that mission, pushing for breakthroughs that are never easy but possible. Thank you. So a little more than a year ago, President Biden launched, thank you, Joe, the first ever White House initiative on women's health research. Building on the foundation of decades of work in women's health from many of you in this room. And Carolyn made sure yesterday as we were doing speech prep that I understood. She said, Jill, I know that we're doing this now, but there are some women like Carolyn who's been doing this research forever and ever and ever. And I just want you to say, we recognize that. So. So you heard from Carolyn, our incredible team here at the White House who's ensured that government-funded research, and they will include women from the beginning. And that means designing studies and separating the data, which everyone has said, and reporting findings to create treatments specifically for women and for men. I mean, we're not going to leave you guys out. And we've invested nearly $1 billion in this research on women's health. So over this past year, I've traveled around the country, and I have met, honestly, some really incredible researchers. And I've been to universities and the New York Stock Exchange to bring people together and create connections across industries. And the women of this country are paying attention. Researchers and business leaders are too. So we brought all of you into this room to elevate all this information, discoveries that will change how we treat menopause symptoms. We've talked about this all this morning. Research that uses genetics to find the cause of extreme morning sickness. And I heard this a couple weeks ago, and I was particularly interested because my own granddaughter was going through the same thing. Because we're going to be great-grandparents. So funders and founders who are seeing the market for women's health products triple. Advocates who are making sure that women know that solutions are at our fingertips if we just keep fighting for them. Together, we've laid down a new line, a marker of our progress toward closing the gaps in women's health. Everything that you've heard today, and hasn't it been like so informative and fascinating? I mean, I love these forums because I always learn something new. It's just so inspiring because this is our new normal. And today isn't the finish line. It's the starting point. We, all of us, we have built the momentum. Now it's up to us to make it unstoppable. It has been the honor of my life to serve as your First Lady and to join you in this work. But my work doesn't stop in January when Joe and I leave this house. I will keep building alliances like the ones that brought us here today. And I will keep pushing for funding for innovative research. So join me. Be the researcher who makes sure that each proposal you work on considers women from the beginning. Be the investor who searches for the next breakthrough product of treatment. Be the voice in every space, from boardrooms to classrooms to laboratories, who asks, what are we doing to advance women's health? Let's make a promise to all those women out there right now, sitting in a parking lot somewhere after a doctor's appointment, wondering why you're not being heard. So maybe feeling, like you're all alone. And I'll just have to stop here for 1 second. I did hear during that little intermission thing, like, we're not putting our doctors down, right? So some doc in the back said, it sounds like you're putting the docs down. We're not putting the docs down. I don't want you to feel that way, but I think the docs are joining us and saying, hey, we want the answers. So I just want to make that 100% clear. So the White House, all of us here, we will keep fighting for you until your worries turn into answers, your symptoms into solutions, until women everywhere benefit from the life-saving and world-changing research that we know is possible. A new future can ring out from this conference, one that answers the call from women who have been waiting for too long. Let this be the moment that we push harder, the moment that people say, change the world of women's health forever. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please. So I'm so grateful to have a president who heard us and took action quickly. So without Joe, really, this wouldn't have been made possible. And that's the power of someone who understands how to make things happen in government. Because God knows, Joe, you've been here for, 50 years? So someone who has fundamentally shifted how our nation approaches women's health research. So please welcome my husband, your president and champion, I think, of all of us. So my husband, Joe Biden. Come on, Joe.
Thank you. Thank God she said yes the 5th time I asked her to marry me. Please, have a seat. You know, as they used to say in the Senate, a point of personal privilege. When no man deserves one great love, let alone two, when I was introduced to Jill, my youngest brother, said, "You'll love her. She hates politics." Well, look, hello, everyone. My name's Joe Biden. I'm Jill Biden's husband. Let's be honest, we wouldn't be here today without Jill. Across our administration and across Congress, across the country, the work we're doing on women's health research is some of the most important work this administration has ever done. And I've always believed that our nation is at its best when we plumb the endless possibilities that exist for all our women and girls. And that includes their health. Women are half our population, to state the obvious. But like Jill said, for too long they've been underrepresented when it comes to health research. And that's real. You know, that's why over a year ago, we launched the first ever White House initiative on women's health research. And the goal was to fundamentally change and improve how we approach and invest in women's health research. We weren't doing enough of it. And to pioneer the next generation of scientific research and discoveries that are going to improve care for women receive all across the country. Because the fact is, the health of our moms and grandmothers, sisters and daughters, friends and colleagues affects not just women's well-being, but the prosperity of the entire nation. And that's a fact. We haven't gotten that through to the other team yet. No, I mean it, across the board. Anyway, I won't get into it. But that's why in my State of the Union address this year, I called on Congress to invest $12 billion in women's health research to benefit millions of lives and families and communities all across America. Folks, but my administration wasn't going to wait for Congress to secure the funding. We looked for other ways to prioritize women's health with existing dollars that are already in the government and to get important work started. And I knew where to start. Rosa DeLauro. Rosa, stand up. I'm not joking. They say in Southern, y'all think I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. She's incredible. Every important thing I've ever tried to get done, no one paid attention to, you were there for me. I mean it sincerely. You're the best, Rosa. What you did on child tax credit, I mean, across the board. And folks, women's health is something that matters so very much. Along with members of her today, she's going to keep this effort going when Jill and I leave. Well, we're going to fight like hell. We're no longer going to be president and first lady, but we're not going away. And so, along with other members here like Diane and Lauren. Where's Diane? There you go. Stand up, kiddo. Let me see you. And Lauren, thank you. So I'm so proud that to date we've secured $1 billion so far in women's health research from different government agencies. You know, our new agency, ARPA-H, which is patterned after it's called Advanced Research Projects and Agencies for Health, is based on DARPA, which is the Defense Department program, or Advanced Research and Projects Agency. That drove breakthroughs. The Defense Department broke breakthroughs in everything from the internet to GPS. It had a big budget for doing everything else, but it also had this specific individual budget. And ARPA-H does for biomedicine what DARPA does for technology, driving breakthroughs to prevent, detect, and treat diseases including cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and so much more. We're using their funding to drive breakthroughs in women's health and ovarian cancer, and menopause, and migraines, and high blood pressure for pregnant women. The National Institute of Health is using their funding to break down the silos. A lot of silos in government, a lot of silos across America, to make more progress and do it more quickly. For example, we know that heart disease is the leading cause of death for women, but we don't know enough about how menopause may affect heart disease. And that's going to change now. We're going to learn so much more. And the Department of Defense is dedicating funds to research women's health issues like arthritis, cancer, chronic fatigue that affect women in the military. But this research is going to benefit all women, all women. Our work doesn't stop here. Look, you know, in addition to launching the Women's Health Research Initiative earlier this year, I signed an executive order that directing the most comprehensive set of executive actions ever taken in the history of this country to improve women's health issues. And look, it ensures that women's health is integrated and prioritized all across the entire federal government, all research projects and budget plans, across the entire government. It spurs new research and innovation, a wide range of women's health needs throughout their lives. And it does so much more, so much more. Folks, there's literally never been more comprehensive effort from the federal government to spur innovation in women's health research in our entire history. And thank you, by the way, kiddo. I mean, if I can digress for a moment, I have been the beneficiary of a lot of the research been done. I had 2 cranial aneurysms, 2 9-hour operations. Took the top of my head off twice, couldn't find a brain the first time. But all kidding aside, I mean, research is going on across the entire world. I visited every single solitary major health center in the world, 7 of them. And, you know, a lot, what happens even in not just women's research, but, you know, docs who are great, they walk by the mirror and they see a Pulitzer Prize, a Nobel Prize about to be won rather than sharing the data. But that's all changing. That's all changing. And this initiative lays the groundwork for discoveries and research for generations to come. Mark my words. And the benefits we gain tomorrow will happen because we made the decision to do something about them today, now. And all of you in this room are leading the way, and that's not hyperbole, you really are. It's a hell of a combination of people to make things change. Let me close with this. And my daughter Ashley is sitting here. She runs she works for women. She runs a women's health center shelters in Philadelphia. And you know, this holiday season is time not for gratitude, but for reflection. Gratitude's important, but we got to reflect on what's going on. And let me say to you that it's been an honor in my life to serve as your president the last 4 years. But I'm forever grateful. I really am. But it's not a joke. We're blessed to live in America. We're blessed to live in America. I've been over 140 countries. I mean, but for the grace of God, it could have been born in a lot of other places. Literally the greatest country on earth. That's who we are. But we got to raise up even more than we are now. I often say America can be summed up in one word. I was on the Tibetan plateau with Xi Jinping, and he said, "Can you define America for me?" And this is all on the record. I said, yes, one word, possibilities. Think about it. We're the only nation in the world where people, they think there's arrogance in that. But we've never failed to get things done when we set our mind to it. It's all about possibilities. Anything's possible. That's what the Women's Health Research Initiative is all about. Possibilities. You know, and that's what this conference is all about. That's what you're all about. Researchers, innovators, investors, businesses, advocates, elected officials, public, private, and nonprofit leaders, unleashing the drive and discovery and the talent and imagination that you have in this room. A spirit of innovation inherent in who you guys are. I really mean it. Think about it. Turn and look at the people your left and right of you know are engaged in this. It's all about the possibilities and belief we can do things, we can change things fundamentally. I think inherent in the American conscience, setting a bold vision and taking concrete steps to make our dreams reality. Holding on to one more thing that we can never lose, hope. Hope, hope, hope. Because what we need to raise the expectations of the American people up. We got to let them know we haven't forgotten. Whether it's in business or labor or whether it's politics, whatever, we haven't forgotten. You guys go out there, you take care of all these folks. Guess what? How many think that we just sort of forgotten? Why haven't we focused? Because of you and your fearless determination You're making real progress. You're really making progress. There's still so much more to do, and we're going to take all of us to get it done. I know it's a battle, but I know I have a hell of an army here. You know, when I look around at all of you here today, and I mean this sincerely, I know it's a battle we're going to win. We're going to win this battle. You just have to remember who in the hell we are. We're the United States of America. And there's nothing we've ever set our mind to we've been unable to do when we've done it together. It's not beyond our capacity when we work together. And that's what you're all doing, working together. And so I want to close by thanking my wife for Jill. I tell you, like I said, when we got married, my brother said, "Don't worry, she didn't like politics." Well, I tell you what, you stepped up, kid. You stepped up. And in case you wonder, when she speaks, I listen. Thank you all so very, very much. Let's get this done.